Thanks for coming on. It's great to get to talk to you. Jesus, you're a fucking impressive athlete. Like, so Keith, it was Keith that put us in touch with each other from Fit as PR, and he said in his email, he said, "Oh, this guy, you had Christian on last year to talk about Hyrox just before the season started, and this would be a nice follow up for the second year." And he said, "Oh, he's also an accomplished athlete in his own right." And I was like, "Right, what does that mean, accomplished athlete?" So I googled, and see, is field hockey was your sport of choice?
That's correct, yes.
And is that so? Just so I know that I'm talking about the right thing and I'm not just being an idiot, is that that's the one that you see at the Olympics? That's the one with like it's like sometimes it's a blue pitch, or like
correct,
green.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
I
And
played.
Ireland are pretty good at it, aren't we?
You are quite decent, yeah.
Yeah.
Became decent over the years. Yeah, we played Ireland in the Rio Olympics for the first time, I suppose. And
Yeah.
that was a close match. Very close match actually. 3-2.
Okay.
They did very well.
What's and okay, and then rules. So I got given out to before because I had someone that played baseball on, and I spent too long going through the rules just to clarify them for myself. So I'll breeze through quickly. You have a stick, you have a ball. How many's on a team?
It's 11v11.
Okay.
Not like in football.
It's a big pitch though, isn't it? Like everyone always seems to have a lot of space.
Almost same size like football.
All right, okay. And there's a goalie, and then defenders, midfielders, strikers, attackers, whatever. And then am I right in saying that the stick can't come above your knee or something?
That used to be a rule for, like, I don't know, a long time ago, but there are certain rules about the hockey stick that are not very easy to understand. Maybe the easiest one, you can only use one side of the stick, which is the big difference to, for example, ice hockey, where you can just dribble with both sides. So there's like a flat side, and then there's a little bit rounded side, and you're not allowed to use the rounded one. So that's what makes the sport quite technically difficult.
Also, if you have the ball, say, on your right side, you basically can't switch sides then unless you actually turn around, like
you
run
have
backwards.
to turn the stick, so use like the little front side of the stick, and it's quite a technical sport. Yeah.
And what's it like with contact? No contact. Minimum.
No, there's contact.
Okay.
There's no body checks. There's no body checks, but there's contact.
Okay. Would you classify it as rough? A rough sport?
Not from a American football perspective. Yes, from a basketball perspective.
Okay, yeah. Somewhere in the middle of those two sports. Yeah. That's good. So yeah, you're an Olympic gold medalist twice. So you won in 2008 and 2012. 2012 was London, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And 2008 was Beijing. And then you got bronze in Rio. You steamrolled through Ireland and got bronze. And then there's some other stuff. And now a lot of this doesn't mean a lot to me, but we'll run through it. So World Cup 2006, that's a club competition, is it?
No, that's international.
But is it played with clubs or with countries? Because it said Bayern Mönchengladbach, or like Mönchengladbach. Or was that where it was?
That was where it was.
Okay, right, okay. I just wanted to say Mönchengladbach, to be honest.
Yeah, well done, actually. That's not an easy word for
I know,
English
yeah.
native speaker.
I remember seeing it when I was younger. I'm kind of obsessive about some stuff, and like soccer is one of the things. Do you ever play those where it's like name the player and it shows you like an obscure player from like 1995?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm quite good at that kind of stuff. I'm Mönchengladbach. I remember Paul O'Connell, Irish rugby player, was on a quiz show in the UK, and it was one of those like fill in the blanks, and it was like BM was all that was there, and like there was all the space, and he goes Bayern Mönchengladbach, and it was like, how the fuck did he get that? But he said he counted the gaps and was like, there's only one team that has that many letters in it.
Who was the most famous striker for Mönchengladbach in '95?
Oh fucking hell! In '95, when would that have been? That, like, I would have been like 7. Who would have been there? Give me some hints. German, I assume.
Swedish.
Swedish. Larson? Did he play there?
No.
No.
Martin Dahlin, legend for
Oh,
Borussia Mönchengladbach.
okay.
Absolute legend.
And do you support Hamburg?
Yes, I do.
Okay, because German football is quite, what would you call it? Fervent support, isn't it? It's quite like it's pretty fanatical support. It's not like just, oh, I'm going to go to the match and watch it. It's like, I'm going to fucking go to the match.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I have a few of those in my family, but never mind. No, it's to be honest, I think it got a little too intense over the last 10 years.
Okay.
I feel the fanatism is beyond anything that's healthy at the moment, at least in the very like ultra scene. So I don't enjoy that much, to be honest. I very much prefer how it is like in other countries in Europe. So my friends just recently went to Liverpool to watch the Liverpool Man City match, and they were just blown away by the basically just the fun that people have around the stadium for the entire day. You don't here it's more about hatred against the other team and not so much about supporting the own team, which really annoys me.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that for quite a long time in England. So maybe it's just cyclical. Maybe it just goes in like a circle or whatever. So yeah, sorry. So you were like voted most valuable player in like the European Championships twice, like in the season, and then at the actual championships as well.
Yeah, one was the Champions League, if you compare it to football, and then one time it was the actual European Championships with the countries.
Okay. And then I thought this is interesting. So you were sold. I just find it funny. Like, I know what happens in football and stuff, but I suppose because CrossFit is like what I pay attention to most now, when I hear of a person being sold, it just kind of makes me laugh. That like it's like that,
Yeah.
I don't know, a commodity or whatever. So I read that you were sold once for like $75,000 and then another time for $105,000. And both times there was like, what would you call it? Like a reserve, like a starting price or whatever, which was like way lower than the finishing price.
Yeah. Because it's an
When,
off.
yeah, when you're like, are you there when that's like, how do you pay attention? Is like your agent there? Are you there? Like, how do you pay attention to that kind of stuff?
No, I mean, I think especially people from the UK are actually pretty familiar with that kind of logic, because the IPL, the cricket league, Indian Cricket League, has been doing these auctions or drafts or whatever that you want to call it for, I think, 10, 12 years now, 15 years maybe even. So basically, as far as I'm concerned, it's the best and fairest way to start an initial season. Like, very from scratch. If you start at the beginning, and that's what the Indians did. So they invented this league, the Indian Hockey League. They started it from zero. They said every team has the exact same amount of money as a salary cap. And then we do an auction. So every single player that wants to play in the league can sign up. And then there's one day, it took 14 and a half hours. And they literally put every single player that's entered the draft. They pulled the numbers out of a whatever box, and then they're at number 15,205. Then name Moritz Furste from Germany, and then they started the bidding. And every team had the chance to acquire any of the players, and the amount you were basically were auctioned for was your salary. So I could have been there, but I didn't want to. But I was watching it live on YouTube. There's actually a pretty cool YouTube clip. You should maybe put it in the show notes or so, because I think that's actually very interesting to watch. It's like a 15-minute clip of my auction and I mean, I literally sat at 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning with my daughter and my wife in my bed, drinking a coffee and just hoping that they would raise their hands and keep raising hands. It was actually pretty funny.
So if you sold for 75,000, then that meant that your wage or your salary for the year was 75,000 or whatever. That's the way. That's
For that
how it
season,
works.
yeah. For that season.
Okay. Wow, that's so you must have been like, come on, like
Yeah,
get some people to do some phone bids or something to try and drive it up.
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
and okay, and so do they? I assume the clubs know who's like they can see the whole list and be like, all right, let's save some for Moritz there. We need him, so we'll hold off. We won't get any of those first few guys. Okay, right, okay. So I assume then as well, everyone gets like a marquee, like you know, you allocate
Yeah.
maybe half your money for one person and then the rest of it's split. Okay, right, okay. Um, is there pressure with that then when you're like if your initial say opening bid is like 20,000 but you go for like over 100,000 when you like land at that club are you like oh fuck everyone's expecting me to be this like god of hockey coming in here and everyone else is on less than I am and stuff?
Um, well, yes and no. So it does play a role a little bit. You feel I have to admit that I did feel the responsibility that comes along with it a little bit. I was also captain of the team, and then I would definitely say that I was looking after myself, getting there, like, you know, in shape and being like responsible and kind of the empathic team leader. But then on the other hand, once that whole, you know, the game starts or training starts, you never think about it again. And sometimes you make jokes about it. So when like a striker misses an empty net, you would say, "Oh, your pocket's too deep with all the money you were carrying," or you know. So that's just team bullshitting. But
Yeah.
no, but that was never really the case. But I have to admit that I was the highest ever paid player in the Hockey India League. So that was rather something that made me actually pretty proud. I have to admit. That's the little bit of cockiness that I have to take for myself.
um that's allowed. Is it similar then? Is hockey similar to um say soccer or football, you know, where you have like back pages and there's like, you know, loads of gossip or rumors or stuff, or there might be like a journalist writing articles about like, oh, this guy's over the hill, he's lost it, he's lost his touch or whatever, or you know, like all that kind of stuff. Like, does that stuff happen in hockey as well?
No, and I mean, I just said that I was the highest ever paid player. I mean, a soccer player wouldn't even, you know, bend his shoes for that amount of money. You know? So I think that we're still far away from losing the ground under our feet. No, but in India, it's a little different. So in Germany, no one cares. We have sometimes more dogs at a hockey game than actually people watching. So but in India it's different. We had the home stadium that I was playing in a city that no one in like Europe ever heard before, called Bhubaneswar. Is like, and of course there are more than 1 million people living in that city also. But we had a stadium with roughly 17,500, 20,000 people fit in there, and it was sold out every single night.
Wow.
And there's all games live on TV at 8 p.m. And there's like a 1.5 hour pre-game show, and there's newspapers full on the next day, and it's crazy. It's like the 15 minutes of glory, you know, and only that the season is a little longer than 15 minutes. But it was quite an experience. I played
How long
four
how long is
seasons.
the season?
Our season is roughly 2 months plus preparation time, 2.5 weeks or something.
And you were there 4 seasons, so did you like move to India, move back, moved in, or did you stay there for 4 years?
No, 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 no. It's basically, so there's a larger winter break in field hockey in Europe due to the weather,
Okay.
because we play on artificial turf that freezes in winter,
Yeah.
so it's not very nice to play on it. So we play winter season when you actually go indoors, play a different sport, but that's too difficult to explain. But so basically, we use the winter breaks to go to India and play the season there.
Okay. Um, and is the European League fine with that? Or is say if you're playing with like Hamburg, are they like, oh yeah, that's cool? Or are they like, if you fucking come back injured, like what's the vibe like?
No, I mean, of course, this at that point it's a money game. I mean, the clubs would say, if the club would say that, I would say, okay, then pay me that money and I don't go. So
Yeah.
there's basically no choice. It's you know, you provide, you have, like, that's kind of your job, although it's not, because you never make enough money to actually live off that sport. but then still it's kind of your job, because you don't do much else at the time, because you're training professionally, you're just not making professional money. So that was never an issue with the clubs in Europe.
Was it a bit of a culture shock then, going for a couple of months over to India and then back? It must have been, especially if you're leaving winter, it must have been double the shock.
Well, in the first year, I have to admit, I always say that in interviews, that it's like literally the most spiritual and socially embracing, if that's a word for it, like time of my life. I learned more in those first 2 months in 2013 about the world than in the rest of the 38 years that I'm on this planet. That was absolutely stunning and mind-blowing, walking around with these guys. I mean, I don't have a connection to religion, for example, but standing at the Golden Temple in Amritsar with like this famous Sikh temple, the basically most important religious temple of the Sikh culture or religion. Those and we had a lot of Sikhs in our team. So these guys, like, this lion hunting caste from, which is very interesting, because they are I think it's the fewest people are Sikhs, but then they basically have all the power in the government. All the politicians are, or many of them are Sikhs. So we're sitting at this. I'm standing at this temple, and basically, obviously, like a tourist walking around, looking at this impressive building and so on and so forth. But walking next to the guys and them walking through it, and the seriousness and the spirituality of them, and with how much respect they basically confront or walk through that, gave me chills the entire time I was walking next to them. And I was just blown away by literally by the seriousness that they put into this thing that they call religion, that we all call religion, but where I never had an access to from any perspective. So that was one thing. Or I was invited to a house of one of the younger players, where he lived with his parents, his brothers and sisters, his grandmother, and it was like 3 rooms or something. It was actually a pretty okay house for India, but so he was living there, and the kind of, the way that they were appreciating me just stopping by. They gave me money. That's a tradition there. So they have nothing, and they gave me like a 500 rupee bill or something. And I was told that I can never not accept that. So I felt like the worst person in the world walking into that house of that player that didn't even make like 5K that season. And his grandma gave me like a 500 rupee bill, which is like a lot of money for them, a lot of money. So now, sorry, long story short, but that was the most impressive time from a social perspective.
God, you could have doubled your wage if you just went around knocking on everyone's house. Be like, hey, I'm just stopping in for a visit. Just want to call in for dinner.
Oh, damn, I never thought about that.
You could have come home with like 210,000. God, you really missed it. I saw as well, there's an indoor World Cup and an outdoor one. Like, what is there a difference apart from the fact that you're inside and outside? Obviously, is there other differences with that?
Yeah, big differences. You want to go there or leave it?
I mean, you can give me the cliff notes. Is it played on a hard court, like a hard surface?
It's played on a like indoor school gym surface,
okay,
like basketball maybe, or handball, and it's 6v6 instead of 11v11. It's
so is it kind of like say like what futsal is to football then?
Yeah, exactly the same. That's very comparable. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Oh, I'm proud of that then. That's cool. You retired. So I was a bit confused with this part. So you retired from hockey.
Everyone is.
But then I read an article that said that you like unretired because some local club or something was struggling for players or something. Is that right?
No, I retired from international hockey in 2016 after the Rio Olympics. I played a couple more years for my home club in Hamburg that I never left, apart from the Indian thing and the Spanish journey. And then when COVID hit and our events were down, and we literally couldn't do anything. For some reason, a Belgium club called me up and said, "Would you fancy play another season?" So I played the COVID season, as I call it, which was from August 2020 to like March 21, where like nobody was allowed to watch or anything. And I had like an exemption to drive to Belgium every Thursday to train with the team a couple of times and then play games on Sundays and drive back home without seeing anyone but the team and doing all these testing stuff all the time. But it was fun because I didn't have anything to do, and so I could make some bucks on the side, and I was enjoying that a lot.
So there was no hockey matches in Germany; they were like off. But
No,
then,
they were also playing under these circumstances, but no club in Germany called me up.
okay. And had you made your peace with retiring? Like, were you
Absolutely.
like slippers and pipe, like I'm done, and then the phone rang?
Yeah, I mean, I never touched like a hockey stick again after I retired in 2018. Not a single time. And then they called me up, and I told them, I was like, guys, I didn't play ever. And they said, yeah, never mind, you're gonna be fine. And then so I went, but yeah, I haven't played ever since.
And how long did you play for? Say from when you started, like playing week in, week out until 2018. How many years was that?
I played my first season in 2000.
Okay, so 18 years of, you called it like professional training, but not professional wages hockey, basically.
Yeah.
So you retired from international in 2016. What was that like? Because if you won gold in 2008 and won gold in 2012 and won bronze in 2016, obviously for like, 99.999% of the population, winning a bronze medal at the Olympics is like amazing and fantastic. But if you've come off the back of 2 golds, is it like disappointing, or was it like, was bronze? Were you happy with bronze? You know what I mean?
Yeah, bronze was more than gold. It was, I mean, look, the thing about that question is that it's impossible to compare any kind of successes or titles or
Mm,
medals, because there's like, I consider, if I would have, if for me it would have been about titles, I could have quit in 2012 already with
yeah,
like age 28 or whatever, because I literally, and it's not me, it's of course I was doing team sports. We won in that decade, we won everything, literally everything. There's not
yeah,
a single title we didn't win in over the 10 decade from 2002 to 2013. So, but that's not the driver, it's like sport creates like memories and histories and emotions. And I have like, there's a title that I won with my club team that I don't want to go into, but that's, which doesn't mean anything to anyone in the world, but for me it's almost the most important title emotionally that I ever won, because it was a stupid German indoor championship title, but I never won one before. And this was only with my 6 best friends, basically, that I grew up with,
yeah,
that just had fun playing another last season in 2018 indoors. And suddenly, for the first time, after trying it for 17 times, losing 8 finals, we won that stupid thing. And, that meant the world to me. So, and of course, if I tell you that emotionally, it almost means as much as a gold medal at the Olympics, of course, that's a stupid answer, but as far as I'm concerned, emotions basically are the main driver for everything we do in sports. And for me, every single title or story has its very own history and story behind it. And that's what's the important thing. And so, like, for example, in 2016, at the Olympics, we were with 43 seconds to go in the quarterfinals against New Zealand, we were 2-1 down. And we scored 2 more goals in those 43 seconds and won at 3-2 and went to the semifinals. And it's still called the biggest comeback in sports history at the Olympics, officially by the Olympic Channel. And so we had that story, that the career could have been over in that very second with a quarterfinal loss against the Kiwis. And then us making the semis and then being absolutely smashed by Argentina, because we were still basically celebrating that last goal against New Zealand, but then fighting back against our arch rivals that we bet like every single time in that 15 years of my international career, Holland, and then beating them again in penalty shootouts at the end. That was, as I said, it was almost better than the feeling 4 years before. It was amazing.
Yeah. Did you know you were retiring after that from international?
I knew it exactly the minute after we lost against Argentina in the semifinal, and I told the team that night.
And were you like content in retiring? Were you happy in retiring, or was it like a fed up feeling? Did you think you just like, as you said, you'd won so much, you just ticked off all the boxes that you were like, yeah, this is fine?
No, it was, the thing is about what I said before about being professional amateur, if you want, is that you actually count in like 4-year cycles, because there's nothing more than the Olympics. So you either play until the next Olympics, or you might as well just leave it in the first place, because the hustle is very tough. I mean, we had 9 to 11 training sessions a week, plus the games on the weekend with the club teams, and then the international travels, 120 nights in hotel rooms a year. So and I had a family already. I had my first daughter was born in 2015. So I got married, and life changed and the responsibility changed, and I was like, okay, I can't do this another 4 years. But I was not sure. I went to the Olympics and I was like, okay, this is still my life. Let's see what's happening and so on. But in that moment after the game, I felt, okay, this was all. I gave it my all, but I cannot do it 4 more years. Absolutely
not. Was club retirement a more difficult decision than that?
Well, the thing is that the difference between international hockey and then club hockey is quite big. So a good international player can play for quite a few more years on club level, just because the gap is quite big. So I could probably still play if I wanted, but no, it's more or less the same decision. I found, I think, timing is everything, and at one point,
Yeah, I remember hearing, I think it was Rio Ferdinand or someone was talking about when he retired, and he said that he just had this thing of like getting out of bed like the morning after and just being like, oh, like that there was no like, like it's usually like, all right, get up and I need to go to training, and then after training I got that media thing, and then after that I got this and that and rehab and whatever. But he was like literally got out of bed and was just like, oh, okay, I don't know, like there was just no drive behind things. And I know I've talked like say in CrossFit, like say Matt Fraser knew he was going to retire, and he had all these things set up that like the day after I retire I'm starting this, because he didn't want that kind of void or whatever. When you retired from that club in Belgium, you were already, Hyrox is already on the go, is that right?
Yes, absolutely. And just one thing to the Rio Ferdinand story. It's like, us athletes, there's a saying that many use, that's like, professional athletes die twice, because life is literally over when you end your career, because everything that was defining your life is done, and you're not doing that. That's what you just said about Rio Ferdinand. So basically your life changes 180 degrees from the day you wake up in the morning after your last game, or whatever you want to call it. And that's pretty scary if you think about it, because that's not normal. That there is no, I would say there's no other job in the world or whatever where that is really comparable, because quitting is different, because you still have your habits, you still have your stuff. Here you don't. It's everything's over. And that's also quite frustrating for many, not for all, but also the day you quit is the day when the newspapers stop calling you and you start calling the newspapers. That's also quite challenging for many, I just assume, but especially in the soccer world. But to answer your question, I studied beside playing professionally, because I knew that I could never provide from just being a field hockey player. So I did my bachelor and master while playing, and I started working part-time in an ad agency already in 2012, and always did stuff besides. And I actually founded the company even before I retired from club hockey in Germany, 2017. Christian and our third partner, Michael, and myself, we founded Hyrox, and had our first initial inaugural event in Hamburg in 2017 on the 17th of November. And yeah, So ever since, I was basically doing that together. And I just said it the other day in an interview in Germany. It took me some time to really find that fire and light that fire inside of me again that I had for being a professional athlete. And if I'm totally honest, then it probably took me more than a year until I had the same, like, until I was the Rio Ferdinand again that woke up in the morning and didn't know exactly what to do. So it took me probably a year also, where I woke up in the morning and I found myself a little bit in between. Damn, I'm not an athlete anymore. No one's calling you and no one wants an interview with you. This is annoying. And then on the other hand, I have this job. Oh, wow, that's actually also cool. Is it? I don't know. And, so sitting 9 to 5 in the office suddenly after coming back from the Rio Olympics is quite challenging. But it took me over a year, and then I lit that fire again. And honestly, it's the same burning flame.
How did you meet Christian? How did that start? How did Hyrox become like your thing?
So I was working in the ad agency, as I said, and Hamburg was getting ready to become an Olympic host city for the 2024 Olympics. So they were going into the bid, and I wanted to pitch for that global marketing budget that would make Hamburg popular in the world as being an Olympic city, which is a pretty famous account to have.
Yeah.
And I knew I couldn't win that pitch by myself with the agency that I was in. So I called like the one guy I knew that knew everything about PR. And I called the one guy I know that knows everything about events. And that's Christian. And so I called him and we teamed up for that pitch. We won the pitch. We won like a hundreds of millions of dollar account. But then a week later, Hamburg had a referendum and decided to not become a host city. So that company was
Thanks,
torn.
Hamburg. That's great.
Thank you very much, Hamburg. But I mean, in the end, you know how life is, right? I mean, Hyrox would have never existed if we would have won that pitch, because I mean, literally today we would be sitting here basically preparing ourselves for the Olympic Games in 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so that's when we started.
And his background is like triathlons and Ironman racing, and those, like, as you mentioned, those big events. So when you guys like sat down and were talking about this, and like, did you anticipate that it would go to the stage? Like, was, say, Christian's pedigree of doing this kind of thing with events, were you like, oh shit, this is actually going to be a big thing, because he kind of doesn't really do things by halves? Because like the numbers are pretty crazy. Like, so the participation, say, last year was like 35,000, like globally took part. And then this year is predicted it's going to be like 90,000. So it's going to more than double, like way over double. And even just if you look at the individual races, it's like 1,300-ish, like was the kind of average for races last year. And then it's going to be over 2,000 this year, which is like, it's remarkable that there's no, it's kind of like, in a way, it's similar growth to like CrossFit back when it started, back when the open, every year the open registration went up and up and up and up. Like, when you sat down and you were talking about it, was this the plan? Was it always to kind of like go big or go home? Was that always the driver?
I mean, I would say yes, but not in a arrogant way. It's rather, we sat together, and I mean, Christian is a visionary with things that he pitches. Sometimes we're fighting about the realism behind the idea, but then we have a fight, and that's awesome also. And then we go to back on track. But it's like, when that idea was basically pitched, the first pitch Christian had was like, there is this gap in the fitness world and we just have to find it, and we think we have an idea. So that's how it all started. And our race director Mintra Tilly was basically creating ideas for him on the side, doing like, how could that look like, and so on and so forth. And I know he told you the story. So we literally started working on names. We started on thinking about marketing, and I would rather say that's why I was struggling to answer the question in the first place, because did not even think about it from that angle. We never had a business plan of where we want to be in 5 years. We just went with the flow. We just did what we did. And I was thinking about communicating this sport the entire day, and he was about making the event better and making the product better. And we were just angry about every single thing that didn't work from the start, and every single person that told us that they want us to fuck off because we were asking them for sponsorships or whatever. We were like, why would you not understand this idea? It's amazing. Why would you not sign $1 million sponsoring deal in the first year with us? It's absolutely not understandable for us. But that was the is that a word? Convincedness? No, that's how convinced we were with the idea. So and we never had plans to where we want to be in 3 years or 5 years. We always said it's the dream. We want to make a sport from Germany big in the US. We want to rule the world. But that was, just us talking. That was not with a plan behind it. That's growing organically.
How important are people like Hunter McIntyre and people, like kind of recognizable celebrities, or people who like, I guess the thing about Hunter is he's very Marmitey, where like people will absolutely love him and think he's great, or people will just fucking hate him and won't want anything to do with him. So like either way, like he's entertaining regardless of what side of the fence you're on there. You can't not be entertained by him. So when someone like him gets involved, that's like a PR dream, surely. That's like, okay, instant eyes, instant chatter about the sport straight away.
Absolutely. It's like, apart from the fact that I really like Hunter, it's, look at the world of sports, look at the Novak Djokovic's, look at Cristiano Ronaldo, name it. You will not find many superstars in their sport that do not polarize and have the pros and cons of the sports world behind them. And that's amazing, because you know what, the most important thing for being a professional and legit sport is two things. First of all, you need a professionalism behind it. So you need people that actually consider this their sport, so they try everything to become the best in the world. And second of all, you need as many people in the world that can actually do it in order to grow the grassroots and then build out that elite of athletes. If you only have one of the two, it's going to be very difficult to become a very legit sport. And I feel that therefore people or individuals like Hunter, or also Chris Ruglowski now, just like individuals that are just amazing athletes, but also have a story to tell. That's actually what it is. Life is about storytelling. That's what it is. We tell a story. Everyone has a story to tell, and the best stories are the most entertaining ones.
I couldn't agree more on that. You mentioned the grassroots there, and I noted that affiliated gyms are becoming, I guess, part of the Hyrox. I don't say hierarchy, that may sound weird, but like the community or whatever. What does it mean to be an affiliated gym with Hyrox?
Well, first of all, I love the fact that we have this kind of channel, I call it internally, because at the beginning we started with looking at gyms from, it's actually funny. Everybody's talking about digital marketing and how to engage on social posts and whatever. Our best marketing tool is offline. We have our target audiences walks into a gym every single day all over the world. So the thought behind it was, if we have every single gym in the world working with us, we will be a very successful company. That was the logic behind it. And we didn't think about it at the beginning. We didn't think about creating a model that could be a licensing structure in the end. But we realized it makes a lot of sense. And also we realized that not the one thing, but the absolutely most impressive thing that CrossFit did is they created local communities for a sport that has not existed before. And that is beautiful. That was amazing. And so many gyms obviously picked that up, because that's what they're missing, community. And that's the same with us. I consider us being a completely different sport than Hyrox, than CrossFit, sorry. with obviously same ideas, but as much as marathon and 100-meter sprint is different, I believe that's as far we are apart from each other. But I think there are still thousands, hundreds of thousands of gyms in the world that still miss what the CrossFit boxers found, which is a community that they can embrace. And we see that all over the world now, because the model works and people are going into the gyms, and they have another reason why to go to the gym, because they have their little Hyrox community there now, and who they train with for an event, and then go there and cheer each other on. And that's the feedback that we get from most of the gyms. And that's actually really, really cool, because it opens a completely different world apart from this only event focused structure, which is very important for us at the moment. We consider Hyrox being much more than just this event sport. It's supposed to be like a global fitness platform, and the gyms play a very important role in that.
So if you're an affiliated Hyrox gym, what does that mean? Say if I own a gym and I say, okay, I want to be part of this, what do I get, or what do I do?
Well, the product behind it, that's one of the most important things that we're working on at the moment. But right now, it's basically, I mean, you're allowed to use the name. You can offer Hyrox classes. You get all the branding materials inside that package, and you can just use the training method and all the workout of the weeks and so on and so forth. But working with the gyms, I don't think there are many gyms that are using it apart from the reason that they can offer these classes and really offer their members the opportunity to professionally train for Hyrox events.
Now, when I spoke to Christian, he said, it kind of echoing similar things that you're saying there, of like the 100-meter sprint versus the marathon comparison, and how there's it's not like he was like vehement in his I guess assertions that like we are not encroaching in any way. We don't want, like, we're not in competition with CrossFit. We don't want to be putting ourselves in competition with CrossFit. That's not what we're trying to do. That it's different. And but as soon as you hear affiliated gyms, you instantly do draw a parallel of like, oh, that's quite similar to like what CrossFit did. Are you getting any? Have you gotten any kind of pushback on that kind of stuff, or have you gotten any kind of like, like legal pushback, or just like attitude pushback, or like questions about it or anything like that? Or have you found, say, the kind of global fitness world has been very welcoming to a new thing coming in?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, there are many, obviously there will be many people that do not like us, and especially from the CrossFit world, I believe there are probably many that say that we are a copycat or whatever. And as long as you have not seen an event, you might maybe think that, because the workouts are familiar when you are a CrossFit athlete, but the training is not our logic. And I mean, it's CrossFit boxes are our best affiliated gyms. I mean, from the numbers, because they understand it immediately, and they most of them have 2 licenses now, and they pay. I mean, our license is I think a third of the CrossFit license, so it's not that it's absolutely unachievable. And I think many CrossFit boxes picked it up very quickly, because they know they saw the workouts, and they're like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Oh, great, you have an event too? Wow, that's even an addition maybe to our concept here. And yes, I see the comments on social, but sometimes when we publish something and someone would say Hunter McIntyre is the fittest athlete in the world, and then I see the comments, and I'm actually laughing about it, because in the end it's interesting to see not laughing from that. That's not how I meant it, but I'm smiling because in the end it's good marketing for us if people start discussing and talking about it, and also throwing shit at each other. Then yeah. I lay back, I read it, and try to make our sport better. And as I said, that discussion is off the table for me, because I mean, you talked to Matt Fraser, I did too. He doubts that he could beat Hunter in Hyrox without really preparing and training for it. I doubt it, but then as much as the other way around, Hunter has no chance in CrossFit. So it's like, it's two different sports, and they are both amazing athletes in their field. And if one of them would start completely doing the other thing and trying, then maybe, but I think that it doesn't make much sense to discuss that. And in the end, no one cares. It's storytelling.
Yeah. No, I totally understand what you're saying. I just also know that I'm asking questions that I think people would ask if they had the opportunity, but it is interesting, and like it's mad really. The events are, just for anyone who doesn't know, I guess the events are like, I guess it's kind of like a waterfall start, isn't it? It's like there's like heats, but it's like when the people are out of your way by a certain amount of time, you essentially join the field of play, and you kind of keep joining and joining until everyone's gone, and then it's the same race, same movement, same rep scheme, same time, everything, global, like wherever you are, every race is identical. And there's stuff like burpee broad jumps and lunges and like running and rowing, skiing, wall balls, all that kind of stuff. So this is like, is there ever a temptation like where, so obviously when that was designed, it was like, okay, this is perfect. Then is there ever a temptation then to be like, what if we added in like such and such, or what if we changed the order of this, this, and this, or like, is there ever any kind of temptation to tinker and that kind of stuff?
Well, look, when we started, we really, the not only the order, but also the workouts that are now defining Hyrox are, as you can imagine, they are not like out of the blue. We tested everything, and we tried it from different angles, and we discussed everything 6 times, because we had basically 3 big arguments. One is it has to be judgeable, and that from a mass participation perspective. So because we obviously cannot have, with 5,600 athletes in London, we cannot have 5,600 judges, or so it has to be judgeable from a mass participation perspective, which means like overseeing everything and judging, but you don't need, at burpee broad jumps, you don't need a judge every meter. You have maybe 5 on a 40-meter lane to do the judging. And so, so judgeability is maybe a creative word, but that was one thing. Then as we're talking about mass participation, we're always not only talking about very well-trained people. So we would, for example, box jumps. We were thinking about box jumps for a long time, and then saying, oh, absolutely not. First of all, it needs an individual judge. And second of all, if like this 30-kilo overweight person that does its 95th box jumps and then just cracks an ankle on it and falls down, way too dangerous. Then we discussed monkey bars, and then we did this with sports analysts and stuff, and we realized monkey bars is actually a workout that is very difficult for everybody, especially for females, to complete, because it's just carrying their own body weight, and we did want to have a sport that is accessible and also finishable for like 99.9% of the people. So that's why we chose those workouts. And I totally understand the question, but I have to admit, most of the time it comes from people that fully understand CrossFit, or are also from that world, because it's such a familiar thing there, right? To change the workouts for the games and for training methods. So, I mean, no one that does triathlon would ask you, you would not ask them if they would consider including rowing instead of swimming next season. So for us, that's the sport now. I'm not saying we will never, ever change anything, because we're still very young. And if there comes up something where we say this can really improve our sport and make it better globally, then we might consider it. But for now, the idea is that the sport that is called Hyrox is these 8 workouts and the 8-kilometer running.
It's it is, and it's cool. I think the thing that I really like about it is like the measurability of it, where it's like, in 2020 2020 I did this, or 2022 I did this, and now I've done this and I've gone faster, slower, whatever, that kind of stuff. It is that stuff is remarkable. There's this year there's going to be a North American Championships, a European Championships, and a World Championships. I'm in Ireland. Can I enter the North American? And so it's not like geographical, it's just like where the actual event is.
Yeah. And there I have to admit that we maybe did not do a very good job in communicating it properly. Also learning for next season. But basically the reason for those EU and US champs is that we implemented 3 elite races for our top athletes that also have a prize purse. And we will be having a medialization behind that, and we really showcase it in a very special arena. They will be running on treadmills instead of running on the actual track, and there will be bleachers around it, so it's like an actual stadium for that, only for the elite race. So those elite 15, as we call it, the 15 best male and female athletes, and for that we created these European and US championships, and everybody can attend. For the elite races, the top 15 times until that day on the 10th of December, the last races in Los Angeles and Frankfurt. After that, there's the cut, and the top 15 athletes are qualified. And then whoever signs up, number 16 comes back in, 17 depends on how many people attend. But apart from that, in the open categories, everybody can sign up, and you from Ireland can join the US Championships in Chicago. We're very happy for you to become the US champion.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to. Incredibly unlikely. There was 28 races, say last season or whatever, and then this season there's 41. So are you doubling up on like, we're gonna have like 4 in London, or is it like we're gonna also have one? So is there new locations as well?
Yeah, it's actually, this year is very exciting with all the new locations. So on the 19th of November, for the first time ever, we will have 3 events globally on the same day in Dallas, in London, and in Hong Kong, which is actually pretty cool pretty cool milestone, I have to admit. So Hong Kong's new, with a few events in that market, adding Taiwan, adding Singapore. We just recently added Scandinavia with a couple of events in Stockholm and Copenhagen.
Cool.
We added a couple more events in Spain. Glasgow is new on the map. Houston, Texas is new on the map, and a few more.
That's cool. And is it getting easier to? So obviously, the more people that are doing it, the more gyms that are doing it, the more like people that are applying to do it. But is it getting easier as well to go to a city and say, "Oh, we want to host this event," that they're like, "Oh yeah, okay, I know what it is," rather than going to, say, like a couple of years ago, I'm assuming you were going to places saying, "We want to host this event," and you're having to explain everything from scratch and be like, no, but it works, like, trust us. And like, whereas now you can say like, here's Las Vegas last year, look how epic it was, and they're like, yeah, okay, we want it.
Yeah, the good thing, the good and bad thing is, the good thing is we're doing private company style. So we just acquire or lease the convention center hall.
Okay, yeah.
And they don't care what we're doing. You explain this and you send them a draft, but we never had to explain to them what we're doing. They just want to know that we are back out at 2 a.m. in the morning and the day after. That's all they care about. But talking about like marketing money from cities, of course, no one cared 2 years ago. And now suddenly we start talking to cities like Manchester saying, look, they're going to be 2,500 athletes coming for the World Championships. That's a big thing for you also. That's like 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 hotel nights. So let's talk.
Yeah, that's cool. So if I'm going to an event, we'll say like Glasgow, I go there. You can do it as a team too, can't you?
You can do it in a double. That's my sport.
And so I can go on my own, I can go as a pairing, and then the workout, obviously the workout in advance if the workout doesn't change. You
Yeah.
have a date of whenever the event is, that's your training window, you gear up for it, whatever. And then presumably the following year you'll have the same location or another nearby location, similar time of year, so you can say, all right, there's my benchmark set, and then we move on from there. It's absolutely remarkable. I think it's you can never have too many sports, and especially I know, like, I understand what you're saying about like social media comments and stuff, but I mean, like, that, to be honest, that stuff about like people getting pissy when someone say, I mean, the same thing happens when, I remember seeing Justin Medeiros won the games last year, and people were like, "Can we drop this fittest on earth shit?" And start, and it's like, like, just fuck off and go watch whatever sport you came from. Like, just leave this one if you're not interested in it. Just piss off. Like, but I think it's remarkable, and like, look, it's an opportunity for people to train. It's an opportunity for people to, like, move better and be fitter and live longer and everything else. And if you can be entertained and tell stories, as you say, along the way, I mean, it's really an unbeatable combo. But thank you for coming on the show, and best of luck with what looks like it's going to be a barnstormer of a year, just purely based on numbers. It looks like it's going to exceed like anything that you and Christian would have thought of when you sat down in Hamburg the first time. I'm glad you missed out on the advertising gig with the Olympics. It turned out pretty well. Yeah, congrats on everything, and best of luck with the 2022-2023 season.
Thank you very much. Very much looking forward to it. And hopefully next year we can still talk about the same growth, but we'll see. Thanks for having me.